All right. Well, I'm so excited to have Ashlyn Carter here with us today. I was telling her before we hit record, I've known who she is for many, many years. So this is really exciting for me to get to meet you face to face and talk to you. Um, so let me see if I can get this right. Kind of give a quick little bio. Ashlyn is a conversion copywriter and a marketing strategist and a founder of Ashlyn Writes and the mom to three little ones. And she is just kind of slaying the whole online writing world. So how'd I do? Is that
I think it was beautiful. That was great. It made me sound better than I am. So,
Oh, well, I disagree. But so, Ashlyn, tell us a little bit more about you, what you do, where you are in the world, family, those kind of things.
yes, I am located in Alabama, so my accent's going nowhere fast. But I do talk a little fast, so I'll try to. I always want to just pace whatever I say. But I love my business. Praise God, I get to have my dream job. I started it actually on Saturday. Will be 9 years ago.
Oh, congrats.
And I love it. I have an agency side of the business where we do client services and service in like a one-on-one capacity. And then I also have more of a digital product educational suite side as well. I kind of see it as the testing lab, and then I go out and I don't like to teach things if I can't prove it or have some sort of data or benchmark. So that's usually one fuels the other, and that's how the business works. And I'm married to my college sweetheart. We went to Sanford in Birmingham and got married 10 years ago. And I have a 6, a 3, and a 1 year old, and they are just my joy. I love them so much.
Oh, that's so great. It's so fun to see how that has grown. So I first came across your work in 2017. I was starting my own
Wow.
copywriting agency called Avocado Toast Marketing, and Ashlyn was just such an inspiration to me. Just the way, not only like the way you presented your stuff online was always so beautiful and polished, but I just learned so much from you in terms of just how to be a copywriter, how to position yourself online. And I was offering a lot of those services as well as I was kind of learning how to write online. So
Love it.
and so congrats on doing this for 9 years already. That is exciting. So like how did that come about for you?
Yeah. 2017. So you've seen it all. I am a washed up corporate girly. I studied journalism and political science in college, and I knew this is what I wanted to do in some capacity. When I graduated, it was about the magazine industry was falling apart because of the crash, and so I went back senior year. I said, "Take me out of magazines. I want to go into the public relations side of communications." And so when I graduated, that's what I did. I lived and worked in Atlanta. We were there for 15 years, and I loved it. I felt like my identity was really wrapped up in my work, but I thought I had a glamorous job and I loved it. But I always dealt with stress and anxiety. And then my husband proposed, and it like added one more thing. I also had a moonlight gig as a wedding calligrapher. So I would go home and just kind of that would be my creative outlet, but it also brought in some good side money. So I had the side hustle too. That's really where I'll get into that in a minute. I saw like an Ashland sized gap in the market, but basically, after my husband proposed, I developed an eating disorder. I grew up doing classical ballet, so there's probably some seeds there of perfectionism and a certain type to hit as far as what I looked like. But I really was probably just trying to control something, and so God in His goodness, like it was awful. It was the hardest season I've had to go through. But we got married, and I went right into partial hospitalization, and it was there that I really, those people, truly the Lord used those people to save my life. And that was the first time I realized, like, oh, there's people out there who work for themselves and make money. I had no idea that was possible. And so I got out of recovery, and I told my husband, like, I think I'm done with that, but I want to write. Like, I know I love to write, but I don't know what to do. So I just named my business Ashlyn Writes, thinking I'll write something. And I would take, if anybody would pay me, I would write. Like I wrote magazine articles, I wrote blogs, I like basically you tell me and I'll write it. But I started to see I would go to meetups with wedding industry entrepreneurs and I would hear them talk about how they weren't able to sell or they weren't comfortable explaining their value and their price point. I was like, that's easy. Like I can do that. And so that's where I started to see there being a gap. And there weren't a lot of people in that creative space talking about copywriting. In fact, whenever I'd mention that word in online groups, people would tell me, "Thank you. I don't have an attorney, or I have an attorney already. I don't need help with copyright." And I
Yeah.
was like, "Oh gosh, I'm not getting anywhere." But it just after time, it finally stuck. And I think we were a little bit first to market in a certain niche, and that helped us a lot. And I was able to grow a team in that agency side of the business. But that's the that all sounded really pretty and tied up with a bow. It has been very hard. It's always I think it's Cody Sanchez who always says her dad said growing up, "You're not an entrepreneur if you don't have a moment in the night where you're crying in your hands thinking, 'How's it ever gonna work?'" And I have those all of the time. But God has been very faithful, and even in seasons where I've taken maternity leaves and, just had to think about, like, He's continued to provide. And so it's been a great gig, but that's kind of the story of how I fell into even one I was not even really the lemonade stand kid growing up, so entrepreneurship took me by surprise for sure.
That's a great story, and it doesn't sound tied up with a bow. I know that you shortened it for us, but it does sound really hard, and it sounds like the Lord worked
He
through a
did.
lot of those pivots to bring you where you are today, and so that's so cool. And I love that you were just like, I just love writing, and I'll just write for people, and that turned into like a copywriting thing. And then you mentioned I have an attorney. I felt that too. I think a lot of people think copyright means like this legal process where you're
Right,
stamping, a trademark on things.
right.
But maybe you could just explain what copywriting is.
Absolutely. I love and it's fun to get to talk to a group of other Christ following women about it because I was thinking about it and copywriting is really not all that different. I don't think, Kira, I don't know what you would say from like Christian apologetics. You're presenting an argument that is, especially if you're selling something you believe in. I remember when I was in corporate days, there were some days I had to work on the Coca-Cola account. We were in Atlanta, so Atlanta brands. And I was like, I don't even know if Coke is I don't know if I believe that it's good for you. I was like having like this ethical internal issue. But fortunately, when we work with clients that we can get behind and we believe in, it isn't that dissimilar from apologetics because you're bellying up and basically making a persuasive argument about why someone should have something in their life. And you're using logos, you're using ethos, you're using emotional pulls, but you're also pulling that rhetoric out with some logical, some like you're helping it make sense in their head. And so that is what copywriting is it's really just presenting the sales argument in a way to elicit an action, a buy, a sell, a click, something positive on that end. That's what it is. And copywriting is, I would say, it's layered it holds a mic up to the positioning and the message that's already there, so a lot of what we work on with our clients and what I try to teach our students too is the importance of positioning and really figuring out your value prop in the market because you can have great copy, but if the found what's that song? If the bones aren't good, then we've got a problem. So copywriting kind of comes after that good positioning is there, but the two work together in tandem, and that's how I would probably describe copywriting.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. I love the analogy of apologetics because that is you are making a defense and
Yes.
you're trying to like persuade, winsomely persuade
Yes.
somebody over to your side. So it's not just this
Yes.
soulless like separating
Yes.
people from their money, which I think is
Right.
the bad rap it sometimes gets. But yeah, I love that. And I love too that like as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, you get a little more say in like the people you
Mhm.
want to align yourself with. And so that's great. So so okay, we're not copywriters per se in this group. We've got a lot of nonfiction and fiction writers in the writer's
Oh,
block.
love it.
But I find that my copywriting skills come in handy often as I'm writing nonfiction stuff. But how would you kind of encourage writers who are, not necessarily writing sales copy, but like how would copywriting skills help them?
Okay, that is such a great question. I honest to goodness believe you're doing the harder thing. If you're writing fiction and like that nonfiction, to me, sometimes I want to go back to having free time to just free write or write more creatively because copywriting is a lot of it's applied psychology and it's a lot of like, yeah, there's such a creative aspect of it too. And that's where it's fun to play in the sandbox, but it is a lot of architecture and ordering things the right way, then less I tell people because I have a lot of students come, they're like, "I hate writing." This is not the crew, but "I hate it. Just let me take pictures. Just let me work with my wedding clients," or whatever it is that they do. And I'm like, I think they have this idea that writing needs to be like them sitting in a French cafe with their, having their moment and writing. And I'm like, that is not copywriting. Copywriting is taking what you want to say and what your people want to hear and putting that into formulas and frameworks that work. You're lawyering up, you're arguing for why someone should pay you $1,000 for your package or whatever it is that you do. That's what copywriting is. So I tell people a lot of times to like if you don't feel like a copywriter, one of there's really like three big elements that you need. One, you need to dwell in what copywriter would call voice of customer data, client customer voice hacking, just getting really intimately familiar with how people say things and I feel like as nonfiction and fiction writers, you do that a lot. Like you're doing character studies. You're really like before you embody any sort of character, like you're researching like crazy. That is very similar to what you would do before you draft copy for any of your products. Um, and so we like surveys, data mining, just listening. I think like that, I would go to meetups early on and I would just hit record. I probably should have, in retrospect, said, I don't know in the state of Georgia what their law is, but I'm hitting record. But I would just, and I would play it back and I would just think like, that's how that she says it that way. I don't say it that way, but I'm too close to the thing, but she phrases it a certain way. I had an attorney friend one time and she said, everybody comes to me and says, I need to legalize my biz. And she was like, you know, attorney friends would laugh if I said legalize, but she was like, but that's what they say. So you have to kind of like die to your darlings a little bit, and figure out what that overlap is. It's a Venn diagram overlap. And then when it comes to the last piece of the puzzle, those frameworks, it's I think I tell people because we could talk about AI. I have a lot of thoughts there, but I think that's the magic in understanding the order to say things, how you have to get in there again to make the apologetics analogy, like you would ask the right questions first. You don't just go in and say, well, that's wrong, or this is what's right. Like that there's a certain argument that you need to put things in. And so and there's so many, I mean, you can Google copywriting frameworks. There's dozens and dozens of them. ChatGPT could spit you out a million. We use them all of the time in the business. I like to make our own. But those are the three big pieces that I tell people when you're getting started that you need to kind of bring to the table. And that's again, your voice of customer data, just that listening data, knowing what you want to say, being clear on your positioning, and then being able to put those into frameworks.
Oh, that's so interesting. And I was going to ask you about that whole voice thing, first of all,
Yeah.
because I think, yeah, we're all like, that is a real skill to get into the mind of the customer and like even use the language they're using, just like the attorney said, like, that's not my word, but that's their word. And so I want to reach them at the level that they're at. And so like that kind of overlaps. That's voice and that's positioning. So like and that goes so much in hand with what writers do
Yes.
as well. Like so you said you would go to meetups and things like that. And I know that's specific to copywriting, but what kind of other ideas might you suggest for writers looking to like get out of our own heads with our own voice. We know our own voice really well. Writing in a voice of a character, or even a persuasive essay, sometimes you're trying to connect with a different reader than yourself.
Yes.
Do you have ideas and thoughts about how to get better at that?
Yes, I think like online good stalking is like reading Amazon reviews are a good place to go. Going to Amazon, going finding like the 3-star people, they got a lot to say because they didn't hate it. They didn't like, love it. So they're not gonna give you a word salad about how great it was, but, like, they're gonna give you so, like, looking at reviews and reading customer feedback and what they actually say, Reddit forums, Facebook groups, like, all these little online groups that are out there, you can really start to hear the cadence of what people say. I think something else that could be I actually just thought about this, but now that, ChatGPT can be such a gift at some things, but if there's, like, a podcaster that talks like you're like, "That's the voice," taking those transcripts, putting them into ChatGPT and having them tell you back, like, what is scientifically, what is it about this voice that's going on? I remember when we first started my agency and we were trying to like cull voice on a client so we could figure out like what is it that makes Kara Kara, and you're having to run it through random websites that would say like, okay, her average sentence length is 17 sentences and she uses a comma 5 times every, fourth paragraph and all those kind of things. But now like ChatGPT can do that in 3 seconds, which is
Wow.
nice because you can
Yeah.
quickly like your writers, you know that it's style, it's syntax and style, like, that's the combination that makes a voice, and so a tool like AI can quickly tell you, "Okay, give me a lexicon drill down on this podcaster or this YouTuber because I want this character to sound like this, or my customer is identical to this. Like, what are the phrases they use, and how do they say things?" And give me a list of their top 20 words. And then I also need some, like, if I'm creating a style guide for this client or customer or character, what would you give me are the overarching, you know, tips about how do I write like this? What is this brand voice? Help me identify 3 adjectives that describe this brand voice. Um, so I think that that's what's helpful for us as writers if we're going to speak back again, whether it's character or copywriting, is we a lot of times I don't think we recognize when you're good at voice, you don't recognize probably that your brain's mirroring that without even thinking. You can match it, you chameleon like on command. But for those of us who don't always chameleon on command, it can be helpful to be like, okay, here's my style sheet. This is what I need to sound like, and then kind of uphold everything to that as you work
Mhm.
through.
Wow, like AI, I think it makes a lot of things easier in that regard, right? And like that's a new technology. I know that for years you've not had access to like that kind of information at your fingertips. So there's probably a lot more research involved prior to chat,
Yes.
where you're trying
Save
to
some
figure out.
hours.
Yeah, yeah. That's really interesting. I want to talk a little bit too about positioning. You mentioned that a moment ago too, and I think where that applies to us as writers is often we're in this process of building platform. We talk about
Yeah.
that all the time. Um, Writers need a platform for just about anything, whether their goal is to be published or not. It's like to get your words out there into the world. You build this platform, and so I know your work is often connected to that forward facing, like website development kind of thing. So, what kind of like, what are you seeing? What would, or what is your advice to writers who are wanting to position themselves online, especially because we often are like behind the scenes kind of
Oh,
people?
yes.
And so that's
Ah,
hard for us to put ourselves out there without being like salesy or braggadocious in some way. But we need to do it. We need to put ourselves out there so that people will know, like, and trust us.
okay. I feel like this is like my safe space. These are my people because I hate it. If you could, y'all probably feel the same way. I'm like, if I could just sit in my corner and read and write and like report on what I learned every day, I would be the happiest little clam in the ocean. Like I hate having to put myself out there, but we also know like it doesn't pay the bills. So I think one thing I have to remember is like they don't know how smart you are unless you tell them. So like they don't know how good you are at what you do unless you communicate it,
Mm.
which it just be that way. A helpful book, if you've not read it and it's short and easy, I'm rereading it right now and it hurts so good, but Show Your Work. I think his name is Austin Kleon.
Oh, I love that book.
It's
Yes.
so good, and it just is a reminder, like, share a little something every day. Um, it's it's I just again, like, I feel like y'all are not it does not come easy for a lot of entrepreneurs, especially those of us who like to think and we like to process. It's not this world is not necessarily built for us as far as, like, this digital marketing world. Um I think that one thing that is helpful for me also is having opinions and stating them and not being afraid, because like when it comes to, and I know Amy had asked about like fine tuning positioning, the more sticky position or sticky statements that you can have, the more you become, I can distinguish you, like, because all positioning is, let me back up. Positioning is like trying to slot someone in my head in a category. Like our brains are trying to keep us alive. So when you come across all the millions of messages and things in your feed every day, your brain's just trying to say, okay, which bucket does that go in so I can move on? So what would be helpful with the people that you're trying to build platform with is just going ahead and putting it out there and helping them understand like why you do what you do or why you write the way you write differently or better than somebody that writes the same thing that you write. Like, what is your thing? What are you going to put a stake in the ground and say, like, this is what I think? I know you guys have probably read that article, A Thousand True Fans. It's like an old good article, but what used to hold me back sometimes is like, I can't talk about that. There's not enough people that will like that idea. But that article is a good reminder, like, you can build a dang good business with 1,000 true fans. And it's okay, I think, to go ahead and put your opinions out there. I mean, I think cancel culture is dying. So I think people are more and more comfortable with like, just you're not going to like everything on the internet. So just move along if it's not for you. Um, and so those are some things that I have to tell myself because I also, I hate being like, but we have to be the talent of our business too. But so those are things that I don't know if that's any of that is helpful. I have to
Yeah.
tell myself those things.
No, that's really encouraging. And you kind of articulated a lot, I think, of what we all kind of internally wrestle with. And I loved how you started that by saying they don't know how smart you are unless you tell them. And so, yeah, it's like you do need to have a position, you do need to have something to say, and it won't resonate with everyone, and that's okay. But
Yes.
so many good nuggets. And yeah, what was the name of the article that you mentioned again?
Yes, 1,000 true fans. It's gonna look
Okay.
like a website from, like, 1990, but it is
Okay. Good
finally
to
the
know.
original, but it's a old, I believe he's passed away too, but it was just a good, it's a good article, and anytime I freak out about there's not enough people, you're like, "No, there's enough people in the world that, like, I can sell to this many people and serve them, and I can, like, have a livelihood on that." Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. So encouraging. Um, okay, I'm gonna stick with the whole platform thing a little bit longer because I would love to know too, like, are you seeing things that are I know in copywriting world there's trends, right? There's trends that
Mhm.
kind of come and go, like, do you punctuate? Do you not punctuate? Do you use emojis? Do you not use emojis? I don't know. There's a lot of the trends that are kind of going around in terms of like the positioning stuff and maybe the website copy stuff for writers who are building for the purpose of building platform. Do you know or see anything
Yeah.
changing in that realm?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, we read a lot, our attention span. It's so fun to talk to writers because I'm like, you get it. Like, people, we hear it all day, like people not read as much or people, but I think, and I saw something the other day, like smart people will always read, which I agree with. But I will say, people are not reading every word on your website or every word of your blog article. Like people just on screens, we read differently. And we those patterns are only increasing as our attention span on digital platforms shrinks. So I think continuing, I call it eyeball monkey bars, like making sure that people can swing on your website from headline to crosshead to crosshead to crosshead and still get the gist of what you're trying to say. There's different, we always write in my business and I teach it too. There's about 4 different buying styles. Some people really love the story and the emotional pull. Some people are just like, I need to know the plan about how this is going to work. Some people are very ROI and numbers focused and they want to know, like, okay, if I invest in this, like, what do I get back? So we typically also like to we sell like we like to be sold to. I am a just the facts kind of person. You can skip the story for me, but another girl on my team is like the complete opposite. So when it's helpful to remember that doesn't mean you need less copy on all of your website pages or even in some of your emails. It just means that the copy that is there has to be skimmable. It has to be bite-sized enough so people can go to what they're looking for and find it and then move to hopefully the next piece in the process. So I feel like that has, like, as far as trends, like you said, Kara, that has just, I think, continued. Like you had to write for the skimmer in 2023. You definitely have to write for the skimmer in 2025. You kind of touched on voice a little bit. I think that voice has possibly overall moved a little bit more to talking and sounding human, whereas like even a luxury brand could sound a little bit word salady or elegant. Like even they have started to come like that. I think that Jaguar campaign was a good example. Like, a lot of it, they're just, people sound more like humans, I think now. And so I think that that trend will only continue. I just tell people, like, just truly write like you talk. People want copy to sound like humans wrote it, especially now. Like we're not
Mhm.
even at the top of, I feel like I keep hitting all around AI. I have a lot of thoughts on it. We're not even at the top of the bell curve when it comes to AI. And people, I think, are already like skeptical about, is this a human that wrote this? And so just like having those, doing what AI can't do and having those story moments and those human moments is just more important than ever. Stylistically, if you want to use emojis or not, but I think like talking like your people expect a human to sound, whether that is emoji full or whether that is, to a business executive and you're selling Delta premium economy seats or whatever, like it's just mirroring back to people how they'll feel heard and seen and understood.
That's so good. That's really encouraging. And I love the monkey bars because that is definitely something that I have learned and taught other writers as they're writing their web copy is that, you have to capture with those headlines. I love the
Yes.
David Ogilvy 80, that's 80
Yes.
cents of your dollar right there.
Yep.
And you have to have like our eyes need to breathe. They need that white space. And so
Yes.
yeah, all of those things. It's good to hear you say that a lot of those things are holding true and holding steady and
Yeah.
whole AI thing. Well, let's talk about AI. Like what are your thoughts? I mean, a lot of writers are threatened by AI.
Have we all lost sleep? Am I the only one?
No, for sure.
Okay. I remember it was like 2022, I think, when ChatGPT launched. It was like that December, November. I went weeks with just like, I just told my I was like, we're done. It's done. That was it. Like ship sailed. And so I feel like I've been all over the map, but I was an early adopter to it. I think I got to a point where I was like, all right, either the wave can like knock me down or I can try to like stand up on a surfboard and ride it for a little bit. So that's where I am now with it. It's, yeah, to your point, I think as we feel threatened, like none of us asked for this. I feel like we're all like, I didn't ask for something to write books in 3 minutes. Like we like the process. We like the whole everything that goes into it. And so it can be frustrating, but I think where I'm landing with it now is really trying to see it as a sparring partner and something that I can push back and forth with. I truly believe it's like bad trash in, trash out. You have to give it good. You have to take the time to feed it properly. Um, but I find it very helpful in refining my style and editing, and especially right now I have, the girl who edits or woman who edits a lot of my work is on maternity leave, but I'm finding like, okay, AI is not a terrible replacement, but then I have somebody else on my team who's found multiple edits that Grammarly and ChatGPT missed. So there's a human element that can't be denied. Your ability to tell story, your ability to read the room, your EQ, like none AI cannot hit that. So that's how I use it. I think that as far as like the threat that writers face, I have a publisher friend who's in a two publisher friends in a mastermind with me. We've talked about this too. I think, I hope I'm not projecting my feelings, but that, like I said, we're not at the top of the bell curve, but I really think that what we always see, what's rare becomes more valuable. Thus, if true
Mm.
human written words become more rare, then quite possibly they will become more valuable. And so I think not, and we can all probably spot an AI salad in a heartbeat. The average person can't, always, sometimes they can, but a true craftsman or artisan of the work is gonna be able to discern, and I think that makes us more valuable. And I think we just have to use the wisdom to know what can be outsourced to the robot and then what needs to stay artisanal and what needs to stay handcrafted in our writing and our storytelling. And so I'm not comfortable using it at all to write like full sales pages or full emails. I really use it to help me with ideation, then I go write, and then I'll go back and again, sparring partner back and forth, like to clean and edit and like, what is this? Where is this confusing? Where did I miss something? Like anything like that. I love using it to crunch data too. Like kind of like I said at the beginning, I find it as its ability to pattern recognize great. And especially like when I can check my pattern recognition work, I'm like, okay, I think that all this data is telling me that customers need this, that, and this. What do you think? And then kind of being able
Mm,
to merge both
that's
things.
really that's so interesting. It feels like it's just getting smarter and smarter
Yeah,
all the time. I
it
recently
does.
did a prompt. I said, "Help me make this transition from this paragraph to the next paragraph," because I was just stuck. And I was like, "Dang it, that was really
Yeah,
good." Like
yeah,
I
it's
felt
good.
I was a little jealous. I was like, "Man, I wish I had come up with that because that it was good." And
It is
so,
good.
yeah, but and I
But then
loved,
it'll give me something terrible a few hours
yeah,
later, and then
that's
I'm
true.
like, "It's that what in the world? Like, that was so bad." Did you
Yeah.
fact check at all? No, because that's not even it's patently wrong. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, those are some really good thoughts, and I hope that you're right. I hope that the what becomes more rare becomes more precious and more valuable, and that we will always kind of tend to lean towards the real human
Yeah.
authors. So I hope you're right, and I agree with you. I feel like it is becoming more of a tool. I love the sparring partner idea too, because I think that's a great way to use it. Not to rely on it for to do your work for you, but to like prompt the ideas and
Yeah.
make you better.
It's fun to see too, like as believers, we know that God's like primary way of communicating is his word. Like God loves word, God loves writing. And so it's interesting to see a tool come in and like take away something that like God holds dear. So I think I've seen the guy, I can't remember what app he started. He's a Christian and he's written articles on like why Christ followers should be in AI. He's like, come in, like we need you to not turn, like we need to have our hands in this conversation. And if I remember his name, I'll think you could probably Google Christians in AI and it would come up. It's something that he's talked about a lot. But
Yeah, that's good. Well, I wanted to hear from you too, just about that idea of being a Christian entrepreneur, being kind of out in the forefront, working with both Christian businesses and non, I'm sure. And like how you manage that, how you balance that, because you are a light. I'm sure you're kind of working with some people and some products that I don't know if you stand behind every single one, but it does present dilemmas for us as
yes,
Christians in the workplace. So how do you feel about those things?
Yes, I've absolutely lost money from my beliefs. And God, like I said, God is always good to provide, but yeah, some people do not like what we stand for. I We absolutely get client inquiries that I turn away because I cannot get behind it. So if it's like a new age, recommending something that I mean, I'll just say, like, I remember early on, I was very early on, and I think my theology was still learning, and like I was still trying to be able to articulate what I think. And I had a client and she did like it was kind of some form of it was angel cards and readings, and I didn't understand what it was. I took on the client and I got into it and I was like, oh my goodness. Like, I actually, this is not what my Bible says is true. I felt so uncomfortable. I finished the client project and like that's where I learned like I cannot and I don't want my writers are all Christ followers as well. I don't want to put them in a position where we're helping put more out into the world because we're helping them sell. Like that's it's not just like I'm literally helping them grow, helping them put more out there. And that's where I was like, it took that one client. I was like, I cannot I cannot do this. And so I think now we're pretty keen on the upfront about taking on clients and knowing they're fit. Every one of our I talked to I'm pretty sure I don't know where anybody stands, but I was just like, you know, I I know when we can work with somebody, even if they would not proclaim themselves to be a Christian, and when it'll still be okay, based off what they sell and what their company values are. But it's interesting. I think I've always veered on the side too of I just say what I believe, and we have people in our membership who say like, I mean, one sweet girl, she's always like, Ashlyn, I don't do all that religious stuff, but I'm just grateful for, this, that, and the other that you help my business with. And I'm just grateful that she's even around. But I mean, I'll say what I'm reading and some of our email campaigns that'll go out to 58,000 people, and we'll get responses back. I can't believe you believe that, like I'm gone, like I can't believe I ever gave you any money, and
Mm.
just for believing that the Bible's true, like and that's usually my response is like I've always said that I believe the Bible is the inerrant word of God. So like that's like you didn't have a gotcha moment with me. Like I put that out there.
Right. Not surprised.
It's yeah, it's fine. It is what it is. And yeah, that's usually how I manage. I don't know if that's helpful, but with clients and then, but I try to, I will say this too, all of our employees are Christians, but I have even some contractors who would not say that they are, and they're comfortable in, I don't know, I try to have an environment where people can feel loved and accepted, but I also am pretty clear about like I am not while we have thousands of people in our courses, and I don't say like you have to, I'm not going to let you in if you are a whatever. But from our client when we're working intimately with somebody, I'm not comfortable. I just draw a line there. So,
Yeah. That's
yeah.
good. And I mean, I think it's wise. It's just wise business practice to be careful who you align yourself with and you work for. And yeah, you learn some hard lessons along the
Yes.
way. But I'm yeah, I wondered about that too. And I mean, I don't know if you do the calligraphy much anymore, but even that, like anything wedding oriented, I
Yes. It's
think
a
for
great
Christians, it's
yes,
just
great
becomes a
example.
harder and harder thing to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's yeah, the clients you that's a good comparison. I don't usually even tell them like when we respond back, we just say like we're not gonna be a good fit. Like here's where you can go. Here's some good recommendations from you. We try to graciously help them find somebody else who's going to be a better fit. But yeah, when you work so intimately with something and you're working like all work, we're trying to like put goodness and truth and beauty out there. And when something's just not like with your worldview, it just doesn't fit with that. It's hard to put your head on your pillow at night. And it got harder when I grew a team and I would like put something in front of, I'm saying well, I believe one thing, yet I'm asking them to sell another thing or to help somebody sell another thing. And so praise God, we have a group that we had an inquiry last fall, and I was like, guys, I read this, and Bex on our team was like, great, thanks, got that vibe. Like, I was hoping that you did too. Like, we're good. And
Yeah.
so it's nice. No, and she sent me a message. She was like, thank you so much, because like I was not going to be comfortable with that. And like, I don't know if I could have, I don't think I could have done it. Because I just, yeah, it was we see just a lot of new age philosophy, I think, is usually when I say like, that's usually what we see. So
That's what you get a lot of these days.
yeah, yeah.
Well, I would love to open it up to the ladies here on the call. They've been putting a few little comments in the chat, but this is a great opportunity if you have any questions for Ashlyn about website, writing, positioning, voice, all the platform. We've talked a lot about a lot.
And I'm amazed with y'all after this. I need to have more time where I need to take like I feel like I've forgotten how to write, how you write all of the time. So being
Well, you
around
can
you
join the
reminds
writer's
me.
block
I know it's your
We
group.
would
I'm
love to
gonna
have you.
do that. Just yeah, like you start a business, sometimes you're like, I'm not even doing the thing I started to do.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I feel that.
I know for a lot of writers, the term marketing is just enough to make you break out in hives. Is your background such that like you're comfortable? I mean, you're designing ad campaigns, if I'm understanding correctly, right, for people. How much of that is just like intrinsically a part of good writing, and how much is it's
Mm,
knowing the market strategy of advertising?
that's good. That's a good question. Thanks so much, Kathy. I think that I am comfortable with, yes, it's smart. That's, you nailed like what we're doing. We're designing campaigns. Usually we get in there and we figure out the positioning of something, and then we design the choreography to pull somebody through it. So I think that as a writer, my background, I studied journalism and public relations and then went straight into marketing. So it has always been the world that I've been in. And I think my brain is very comfortable with the intersection of the scientific pattern recognizing strategy side of it, and but what if we creative choreography, like staging of it all. I love that challenge because I think it comes back to, I mentioned ballet earlier. Like that's why I like calligraphy. That's why I liked ballet. I loved industries, things where there was like beauty and artistry, but there was a rhythm to it. There was a routine, there was a technique. I love that. It's like what I've always done. So to me, copywriting is kind of in the same boat, where there's freedom and there's movement that has to happen. There's like a movement quality to it all, but it does have rules. And I love that combination. So that's where, yeah, that it's the third time it's happened in my life. So there's the pattern.
That's so cool. And I love your like just the connection to like the rhythm and the beauty and all of those things, that those can all just work together. God is so good
Yes,
to give
he's
us
so good.
creative ways to express ourselves and
Mhm.
the choreography of it all. So that's great.
Yeah.
So interesting, because I feel like we were talking about this. I know we talked about this last night at my in-person writing group, but I think we talked about it the other day during the writing room about I've been learning to write fiction and struggling between structure and the outlining the plot, but yet then allowing the freedom to let my mind flow and develop the story.
Mm,
And I keep waffling back and forth, but isn't that God though? I mean, he has
yes.
given us just in creation a structure and an outline, but he's filled it with beauty. And so it's what I'm hearing is that it sounds like no matter what we write, there's going to be that intertwining of the rules and the structure and the outline, but the creativity as well and the beauty.
I love that. Okay, Cheryl, my husband and I are taking an apologetics class at church. And this past week, it's a professor that's leading it. And he said, I did not know this. I can't remember the guy's name who like coined right brain, left brain. But that guy said, what's happened is we have made, what is it? Right. He said, what is the creative one? Left, right brain. Right
No,
brain should be
I
is that
think
right?
creative is
I know it's backwards of what I
it's
think,
right.
right?
Yes. I think
Yes.
if you're left-handed, you're right brain dominant, right?
Yes. Basically, he said, we have made the artsy side should be master, and we have made in our world the rational side the master. When in reality, he said, he was saying, and this apologetics teacher was basically saying, this is what I agree with too, that like beauty, there's beauty, and then we just back it up with the data. Like the data is just there to be like, yes, that is correct. And sometimes in our world we have made science or like the facts so the master, and this is it, and anything that is not cannot fit into the box is should be denied, when like that's not really how God works. God like created a lot of things that are unexplainable, but there is a lot of, he's a very rational God. And I don't know, I really liked that, like that flip to think about, because I think as a writer we're like, yeah, like there are, I think we live first maybe in the like what could be, and then sometimes the structure is like just makes that happen, makes that stand up. I don't know, it was just a really interesting thought.
I love that. And I think what we experience is like we don't necessarily see the framework underneath, but the
Yes.
framework has made us experience something beautiful, right? Like when you're
Yes.
reading something, you're like, "Oh, that flowed so well," and I love the way she
Yes.
put it. But all of that was undergirded by the framework. And so that's like the science, but the art is the way it sounds, right? I mean,
Yeah, that's so true. Because you think about good movies, like I didn't know there was storytelling, like, there's screenwriters like these frameworks. Like you just know when a movie's good or it's not, when a book is good or it's not. That's so true, Kira.
that's so cool.
Yeah.
Like that triggered my brain. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
Any other questions for Ashlyn?
So I'm not sure if I can articulate exactly what I'm thinking, but I have been really good at, like, I've written cover letters and stuff for people when they were applying for jobs, and I've even written really good ones for myself. Um, but I've not felt like I've made that transition to, and I need to maybe think of everything that I'm doing that's out there in the public as kind of my resume and my cover letter. I've done it really well for other people, not websites or any of that kind of stuff, but like I said, cover letters and letters of reference and that kind of stuff. It's like people get these letters that I write and they're like, "Oh my gosh, that's so amazing." Right? I'm like, "Great, I just whipped it out, and it's something that is pretty easy and natural for me. But to do that for myself and that whole self-promotion thing, I haven't been able to kind of make that transition. I mean, when I was applying for jobs or doing that, I could, but in articulating about writing or what I'm trying to present or how I'm presenting it, I've got a major mental block on that. Any tidbits of how to
Yeah.
get over that hurdle?
I felt like always a bridesmaid in my business for years. I think what helped me some is starting to kind of back to we don't know how good you are unless you tell us. Um, if you can teach what you know, I don't know how comfortable with that, or explain it, because I think a lot of people are, at least I see with my students, sometimes uncomfortable explaining or teaching their process or what they know, because, well, first of all, they feel like, well, then why would they need me? A lot of us, when you hear what goes in, when I hear what goes into sourdough, I don't want to do it. I'm trying it now, like for the first time, but sometimes I'm like, I think I'll just support my friend. And, so I think that there is, with our agency services, that is a lot of times in YouTube's, I'm teaching what people pay us to do, but some people hear me explain it and they're like, heck no, here's my credit card, do it for me. But then other people hear it and they're like, oh my gosh, I have the bandwidth, I have more time than I have money. I want to be able to do this myself. And I think I was listening recently to something and it reminded me that, like, maybe it was in that show your workbook that I was talking about earlier. There there's so much between here and here, between your ears, mindset wise, that goes on to doing what we all do, whether it's writing cover letters, writing websites, writing books, that a lot of times people, even if they think that even if they think they can do it, they don't know the nuance, the craftsmanship, the 10,000 hours you've put in to get there, and they're probably not gonna do it. So even I think the example that he used in the book, he was talking about a barbecue pit guy who is like one of the top barbecuers in the world, and how he just says like, here's my exact process, here's my recipe, and he's teaching everything, but the the way he figured all that out, like, you can't catch that up fast. Like, that took so much that I don't know, that helps me sometimes when I teach too, is to remember, like, yes, they can go do what I'm doing, but like, it will not be. I put in the 10,000 hours to get it to that point, and so, and like, you can't microwave certain things. So I don't know if that was a really roundabout way, Carrie, of saying that I think what always helped me, I was just always more comfortable explaining my process or teaching something than I ever was being like, you should hire us. But when I was saying like, hey, here's what I'm doing and here's exactly how I do it, that came more naturally. My mom's a teacher. She told me I could be anything I want but a teacher. And so I ended up teaching in some capacity, but I was really comfortable explaining what I did. So I don't know if that might be, it's like once I got through that and I started to hear back how helpful it was easier for me to then turn around and sell. And I think that's probably, sorry, one more thing. I think what helps me sell too is knowing that I use my hands a lot when I'm talking to our students. People will always pay for their problems solved if you're delivering this much value and you're asking them to pay this much. Like, if they can see the difference, they'll pay. And so a lot of times you have to explain this by lawyering up and showing the process and showing how the sausage is made. And then they get that. And then they're like, oh yeah, that makes no brainer for me.
It almost sounds like you're saying, Ashlyn, that if you can remind yourself of the process that you went through to know what you know now, and you share that with your people, that right there gives you some credibility, and you don't have to feel like you're just bragging on yourself. It's like you're saying, I
Yes.
did do all this work, or I did learn this the hard way, right, Carrie? So you can say, I have done these things and I have this experience. So there is something there that is not to be overlooked, right?
Yes.
Right.
And like Carrie, oh, go ahead.
I can, I can write a great resume and cover letter for, going back into the classroom and teaching, or the things that I've accomplished. But for some reason, maybe because it's not been like a job, I have a hard time doing that with my writing life. And, how do I articulate the value of what I have to say? And I mean, I believe in that value, and, obviously, or I wouldn't be doing it. But I just have, that's been a hurdle for me.
Well, I think too, like Ashlyn, don't you think like the hardest page to write on a website is the about me page? Like that's always really difficult, I think, for us to kind of get outside of ourselves and look back at ourselves and be like, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is what I provide. And so I don't know, Carrie, maybe that would look like talking to other people. Like, what is it that you see in me? And then you reframe that as you speaking.
Right. Like pretending I'm somebody else, like getting out of myself
Yeah.
and writing it about me. Like I have
You're
written
too
about other
close to the
people.
subject matter.
I know, darn it. And I don't know how to.
You probably, like, I can imagine have you been doing editing resumes and cover letters for like a long time?
So you know what? It's something that I've just done as a favor for people. It's not ever something I've done as a paid service. It's just I've been kind of a lot of people's go-to. I need you to write a
Yeah.
letter, for a letter of recommendation or a cover letter, or help me with my resume. And I guess I can see things in people and articulate them, those things about those people, in ways that they would never say about themselves. And
Yes.
I just had that part of Romans 12, or yeah, Romans 12 beat into me that, you know, not to think more highly of myself. And I don't know, it's like you
But
said, it's that.
it's such a value. What I feel like what you do in copywriting is so similar because we're helping. Sometimes I'm sure you've had it. We'll give somebody in their something about like their course, and they're like, "My course isn't this good. This you made it sound so much better than it is." And I'm like, "No, no, no, it is. You just don't. You're like you're looking at it like this. I feel like you're giving people
Right.
the perspective, and you're arguing like a lawyer for them, and you know how to do that. Like, you know how to shift it for the audience. Like, they don't know that. You probably know how to write a cover letter for like an art museum director versus a C-suite executive versus like that. All that human nuance and knowledge is vastly valuable.
It is. Really is.
I think maybe if I actually, sorry, if I actually tried to write it in like third person, like
Yeah.
Carrie is, you know, kind of thing, I might have a little better success at, you know, getting out of my own head, if that makes sense.
I think that's a good idea.
So
Yeah, that's good. Well, Ashlyn, this has been wonderful and so informative. How can we support you and your work and find you online?
Yes, thank y'all so this was a delight. I told Kara at the beginning, like, I looked forward to it all day. Um, my website is ashlynwrites.com, and I'm not super active on social media. I think I'm trying to learn how to not have my phone around my kids all the time. And when I'm off, I want to be off and be with them. But you can find me on social media. But our YouTube channel, we try to regularly publish there too, and regularly publish with our email list. So that's where
Yeah,
I live online.
that's awesome.
Thank
Were you
y'all.
gonna
So
say
I'm
something?
very grateful. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, this has been so great. It's such an honor to meet you finally. And I just feel like I got a little crash course in more writing ideas and ways of looking at things. And so I just really appreciate you being here with us today.
Absolutely. I'm grateful. Thank y'all so much.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Have a
thank
great day.
you.
All right.
Yeah.
Bye,
Thanks,
y'all.
Bye-bye.
everyone.